Hello, I'm Paul Moffat.
I'm Jan Moffat.
And welcome to Clockworks, a Legion podcast. The show where we talk about Legion. We tick-tock about Legion.
No.
Like a clock goes
No, not doing that.
Okay, so today on Clockworks, we're talking about episode 6 of Legion. We're going to give this episode the title, It's a New Day. This episode was written by Nathaniel Halpern and directed by Hiro Murai. Hiro Murai is perhaps best known for directing music videos. And to flash forward, there's a section of this episode that is kind of straight up a music video.
Yep.
Nathaniel Halpern, we've seen before. He wrote... This is his second episode of Legion. He wrote episode 4, The Undiscovered, which was the episode with all the revelations, where we discovered what had been undiscovered. So the last episode Nathaniel Halpern wrote was full of answers. This episode, maybe not so much.
Less so.
Do you want to take us through a beat by beat?
All right, so coming off the end of the last episode, we are back at Clockworks. In a series of sessions, we see Lenny, who's now Dr. Busker, talk with Melanie, Patonomy, Carrie and Carrie, Walter, and Sid. With Melanie, they discuss her inability to get over her husband's death. Patonomy is stuck in the past, dealing with his mother's death. Carrie and Carrie talk about themselves being so close they're almost like the same person. Walter has anger issues, and Sid says that things don't feel real here, like it's a dream. Lenny sends Sid for her meds, and she walks the halls, seeing a door that is unlike the rest. She listens to a drum beat on the other side, but is called away to get drugs before she can open the door.
So
we have this series of sessions that's really interesting.
Before we go into session by session, which I think we should, just this little sequence, so many things about it. The whole fact of we're set back in Clockworks, we'll talk about throughout this episode, I'm sure, but we should say something at this point about that it reminds me of the kind of thing that we saw on an episode that, Normal Again episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or don't know the title of it, but that episode of Star Trek where Riker thinks that he's in a mental hospital.
Right.
Or it's a thing that TV shows do sometimes where you're in a mental hospital and was it all real? Is it all in there?
Yeah, is it all?
I don't think we are meant to suspect that they have actually been in Clockworks all along. I don't think there's any ambiguity about that.
No, I definitely don't think so. This is clearly an illusion of some kind.
But it still is, firstly, it's just a lot of fun to see all these characters being different, being a different version of themselves. Also, the way this is cut is also a thing that we see a lot of, but quite frankly, I just like it every time when they're talking to one character and then you cut to another character saying something that's ambiguous, could apply to two, and then we cut back to the other one, so she's saying something.
I'm sensing a lot of hostility from you, and suddenly it's not Carrie she's talking to, it's Walter, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's who she's.
And that's not a completely unique conceit that they're doing here. It happens on a lot of shows, but to be honest, I always like it, and they do it quite well.
Yeah, I think the director does a really great job with this episode.
Yes, the great directing through, and we'll talk about that in other places through the episode too.
Absolutely.
So, and I like a lot, even before we get into the details of each of these sessions, I like a lot the whole concept of, going back to what Oliver said about in a previous episode, what Oliver said about monster as metaphor. And here we have all the metaphors dropped, and what if their superpowers, their mutant powers were, like, what are they metaphors for? And here we have them talking about the real personal trauma that their mutant powers might be metaphors for.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that we're working it in the opposite direction. Instead of their powers as metaphor, we're using their metaphors as power. Or,
Man, this makes for such an interesting episode because as the audience, I guess you could think that maybe they were there all along, but I think it gives you enough clues that most people can figure out that they're not really there, but this is an interesting take on their life. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So Melanie is childish acting. Like, she's got these like barrettes in her hair and she's twirling. The very first scene is her twirling her fingers around her hair. and she's stuck in the past in with her husband's death. But Lenny is, should we call her Dr. Busker? Let's call her Lenny.
Let's call her Lenny.
Lenny is, Lenny says that she's not over her husband's death, and she's pretending he's still alive and stuck in an ice cube.
And it's, first of all, the fact, seeing Melody so childish and so insecure, we've seen very brief flashes of this kind of insecurity and emotional insecurity, but it makes a lot of sense that all of Melanie's closed off emotional self-protection, the way that she...
They're all masking her vulnerabilities.
They're all masking these vulnerabilities. And we see this, and this is like, oh, this is what underneath, this is what she has always been like. And
she looks about 20 years older. Yeah. Like, she's got wrinkled and sallow skin. Like, she just does not look nearly as put together and
no, not at all,
and whatnot as she does in the first one. I should mention also this room. I went back and watched the first episode because of so many similarities, and this room is precisely the same as the room that Dr. Kissinger was in,
so it's
save for one small detail.
We'll talk about it
in a second.
And then, I'll maybe say this again when we're done talking about all of them, but I feel like in terms of Power's metaphor, like, she's frozen her husband away because he's died and she can't let go, so she imagines that he's frozen. And then when Lenny says, you see it, right? That you're the one that's frozen. And this is, I said a second ago that I'd talk about it later, but maybe this is the appropriate time to talk about it. That how good is Lenny as a psychiatrist here? Because it seems like this, if this Melanie was the real Melanie, that would be a fairly astute observation that could really be helpful.
Yeah, I think so. That's not untrue about the real Melanie.
No.
Is that she's struggling with Oliver not being there.
And she's the one that's frozen.
She's the one that's frozen.
Yeah.
She's moving on and doing things, but she definitely, a lot of her actions in the episodes we've seen have been because she thinks that David can rescue Oliver.
And especially in the immediately previous episode.
Yeah.
Like what we just saw was her being very defensive and denying it, but we commented on it at the time, seeing through it, that what she really wanted was exactly what Ptonomy accused her of in the last episode. That
exactly.
She wants to rescue Oliver.
Speaking of Ptonomy,
yes,
I love this scene where he just starts talking about his past and gives this excruciating to the second detail of everything he was doing when his mother died. And it's like, you kind of, at first it's like, it was this, and then he's like, the linoleum had a chevron pattern and it was like 9:15 in the morning. It was just like, it's a clever way of showing his power and an illness that he's stuck in the past.
And it's like, once again, it's, take his power, make it unliteral. If you were to take this person and give them a literal power, it would be the power to live in memory. And that's what Ptonomy is doing. This version of Ptonomy is stuck in the past, is revisiting the past, has complete control over his memory, apparently, which is what we keep saying about Ptonomy the mutant. Yeah, for sure. And Ptonomy, when Lenny says, you spent a lot of time in this memory in the past, he says, I like to think I'm a time traveler.
Yeah, that's interesting. Especially considering what we mentioned, like, way before, was there's this announcement at Summerland, advanced time travel class, blah, blah, blah. And now Ptonomy talks about being a time traveler. Like, is there going to be time traveler in this show?
There's all throughout the show that the setting in time has been very unclear. And Ptonomy, is the real Ptonomy literally a time traveler? That does not seem impossible.
Yeah. Well, mention what you noticed about the song.
Well, and the song, he says that the song that she was singing as she was clearing out the dishwasher, singing along with the radio, that was 99 Luftballons. Now, 99 Luftballons was released in 1983, which means if he was a child, then what we are watching is something that is set in the present. Like, he has to be, if he was born, if he's a child in 83, and he's, in his 30s now, then it's the present. That's right now.
Remember back
in the
This drives me crazy. This drives me crazy because, like, he said it was the 40s 30 years ago. So it's just like the 2040s or something weird like that. Like, it's just time is messed up, and I'll get over it.
I haven't rewatched it. Is there any chance that she said it was 40 years ago, rather than it was the 40s 30 years ago?
Maybe I could rewatch that and find out.
In any case.
But it's really, really 70s and 60s
the aesthetics
clothing.
of 70s and 60s, and here we have here we have another explicit placement in time, or maybe not explicit. We have another implicit placement in time. We have an anchor. Mm-hmm. Here we have an anchor that allows us to place this in time, and it's the first time that an anchor has given us the present as our answer of when this is set.
I mean, it's just an alternate universe where I guess 2017 could be this weird 60s aesthetic with payphones and I don't know, whatever. I'll get over it. I'm still mad about it.
I want to say a little about 99 Luftballons, though. Mm. The song that she's singing, the fact that it's 99 Luftballons places it in time, but also, all right, 99 Luftballons is a song that tells a story. And the story in German and in English is different. Mm. But the theme is the same. So in German, it's a song about a military pilot mistaking balloons for a UFO and shooting them down, which then leads by accident to a 99-year-long war. In the English version, it's a upbeat, catchy song, and the chorus is just about 99 balloons, so people don't tend to pay attention to the story.
Yeah.
The English version is 99 red balloons, but it's basically the same story. It's about shooting down children's balloons because they perceive them as a threat, which leads to nuclear war, which leads to the end of the world, and 99 balloons go by. Both are about misinterpreting a threat.
Yeah.
And they're both about overreacting to a threat. But I think throughout this episode, we have misinterpreting a threat is something that is happening in this episode.
Yes.
And I would say in this episode, there's underreacting.
Yeah, they're definitely underreacting in this one, for sure.
Yeah.
Carrie and Carrie, we don't get much of them besides them saying that they're so close, they're like the same person. That they don't think it's weird that they want to spend all this time together.
Yeah, and the big point of their section, I think, is the part where they say, "Who's it hurting?" That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah, who's it hurting?
I don't know if I have much to say more about that.
Yeah. Walter has anger issues, and he was the last one in his class to develop, to go through puberty, basically, which was interesting. If that's the case, the common thing for mutants is that their powers manifest around puberty. So maybe he got his powers very late in life, is how I would interpret that.
Mutant powers have always been a metaphor for puberty.
Yes.
So in the metaphorical world, we could say he developed his powers late. And in this world, this version of Walter, he says, it's not a race. And actually, what a boy goes through physically and emotionally, that's good advice, Walter. But then he takes it to do I seem less than a man to you now? And we see that he's fixated on his masculinity, and we see that going forward in the episode, and we can see maybe if we hypothesize that the mutant Walter developed his mutant powers late, and then he's making up for it. And that's why he's obsessed with power. He's why he's obsessed with hurting people and dominating people, because on some level he still feels insecure because he didn't have power when other people did.
Yeah.
And now he's trying to make up for it by really taking power when he can from other people. And power is going to be something that's going to come out.
Yeah. I'd say so. There's a statue kind of thing on the desk, and this is a new thing in this office, of two hands, just the hands themselves holding each other.
Mm-hmm. No arms.
And Walter's the only one who touches it. He goes forward and touches it. I don't know if that means anything specific, but it was interesting to note he interacts with. He's up and pacing and interacting with his surroundings. Everyone else is just sitting on the chair.
Mm-hmm. The camera puts attention on that sculpture of the two hands, and it's the kind of sculpture that is very plausible in a therapist's office, or in like maybe not a therapist's office, but in like a feel-good kind of situation, hands to each other. But
it reminds me of Arrested Development. It reminds me of when in Arrested Development they have the little statue of the little boy and he's holding a hand, but the hand is missing the rest of it because
What Arrested Development points out that I think this episode also points out more subtly is that they're disembodied. Mm-hmm. Those disembodied body parts they're meant to be reassuring, but they are not reassuring. They're disconcerting and uncanny. Yes. And so the hand that's not connected to anything, what we see with the two hands connected to nothing is we see the representation of connecting, but not actually connecting. A representation of two people connecting, but they're not actually.
And that represents Lenny being this actually half-decent therapist, but she's not real, and this isn't real.
And she doesn't actually want to help them.
And she definitely does not want to help them. And in Sid's section, she doesn't really care about Sid. Sid's the one who talks about, this doesn't feel real, it feels like I'm in a dream, and she's seeing through the illusion, and so Lenny just kind of brushes it off and sends her for her meds. Like, she has a very short session with Lenny.
And she not only has a short session, but like Lenny gets up and has a drink of water behind her, and Sid can't see her, but we can. And Lenny's just, right. Like her facial expression.
Yeah, it's boredom.
By the way, I think we'll have reason to say this many times in this episode, but Aubrey Plaza, my goodness.
Oh, she's so
anyway, but she gives in her face and in her body language while Sid is talking about how this doesn't seem real. You might expect Lenny, because we, watching the show, know that Lenny is the devil with yellow eyes and is the one creating this illusion. You might expect her to be, worried that Sid's seeing through it, but she is not at all.
No.
She is like,
Mm-hmm. She knows she can't stop her.
Okay. Yeah. Well, go get your medicine.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when she walks down the hallway, this door that looks like a door in David's bedroom, like this is the door that leads to the real world, essentially, we can assume.
Sort of, yeah.
It sounds like there's a drum beat that sounds a lot like a heartbeat to me. That's it's her heartbeat on the other side. It's David's heartbeat. What do you think?
I think it's literally the drum beat for the song that's going to play when Lenny goes through, and we'll talk about that later. But it also definitely is reminiscent of a heartbeat. And it seems like it's it's on the other side of that wall is where their heart is. And on this side, they're trapped in the astral plane and a mental plane, and there's all brain and no heart. This is something that we said earlier to each other outside of the show. But where they are is literally a mental hospital.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yep. And the heartbeat is also like clock ticking, which is Clockworks.
Clockworks. It's a clock ticking. It's a heartbeat. It's the drum beat for the song.
Yeah. All right. So back in the main room of Clockworks, Carrie and Carrie are playing ping pong. Melanie's spraying flowers, and Amy is a cruel nurse. She spot checks Sid, feeling up her entire body, even while Sid tells her that she has a thing about touching. David and Ptonomy are staring at a drooling Rudy. Sid tries to tell them about the door, but Lenny calls David away for his session. In the session, David says that he's found himself, and we see a montage of him playing records, doing yoga, reading, and painting. David isn't schizophrenic here, but has manic depression. In the cafeteria, Amy takes away David's pie. Sid tries to give hers, but Amy says no. When Sid tries to eat her pie, there are bugs crawling on it. Later, Lenny stands in her office and then breaks into a dance montage with flashes of previous episodes.
So
we're reliving these scenes from the first episode. Like, this is straight up, this conversation between David and Ptonomy it's exactly the same drooling scene from the first episode.
And it's the same lines, the same dialogue. Ptonomy delivering Lenny's first speech, and damn.
Yeah, he does a good job of it.
He does such a good job. That is I can imagine it would be hard to do that without channeling Aubrey Plaza's performance, because it is so strong and compelling. And He doesn't deliver it at all the same way.
No,
all
I watched them side by side.
Very different delivery. And I mean, oh my God.
I didn't realize the first time I watched this that was Rudy in the chair. I just completely glazed over it. And frankly, I didn't know until we watched the episode after that that's Rudy, who has disappeared in the real world. He was taken over by Walter, and now he's just drooling in a chair.
Yeah, so what is going on? What does this suggest about real world Rudy?
Exactly.
When they're talking, when David and Ptolemy are talking about Rudy, David says, maybe what was he like as a real person? Did he have a credit card? Did he love dogs? And Ptolemy says, everyone loves dogs.
David doesn't.
I don't love dogs.
I don't love dogs.
Real world David had his dog that he loved, but he does not love dogs anymore.
No, he sure doesn't.
That's something.
That's telling something.
I think there's a bit of, like, for the audience to be like, oh man, he doesn't like dogs. But there's also a level at which David is aware of what has happened.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Because he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what's going on. The illusion is working, but he knows he doesn't like dogs anymore.
That's true.
That's a hint of he has some kind of recognition of the devil with yellow eyes, of Lenny, of King, of everything that has happened. On some level, it is impacting David.
Yeah.
And then...
just to say a quick funny thing again is the square paddles are back.
Yeah.
We got the square paddles.
Square ping pong paddles.
Clockworks has square ping pong paddles. I don't understand square ping pong paddles. If they exist, send us some.
No, don't send me a square ping pong paddle. I'm not keeping it.
I will put them up in our house because what is up with the weird square ping pong paddles?
I'm not having unnatural square ping pong paddles in my house. Thank you very much.
Everything is circles except those. Why?
Lots of circles going on in the background here.
Oh yes, lots.
Speaking of callbacks to previous episodes, Sid comes up and talks to them about the door, and David talks about pie, cherry pie, right? Remember back in Happy Jack, David basically lives on cherry pie. He loves cherry pie. And Sid, at that point, doesn't eat any cherries.
No, she doesn't like, I don't eat cherries. I don't like pie or whatever.
And even here, I mean, there's a bit of a reference to that when he's so excited about pie and Sid's like, that's great. I know you really like that. And when David's talking about pie, he says, Paul has an inside track. He knows someone in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's Ptolemy.
Yeah, so Ptolemy's name isn't the same.
His name isn't Ptolemy, it's Paul. And that makes me start thinking, Ptolemy, why is his name Ptolemy, especially if his name isn't Ptolemy? Ptolemy, by the way, is not a name that pre-existed. Or, I mean, maybe it exists somewhere, but when you Google Ptolemy, this is the only thing that comes up, is this character.
Is Legion.
Is Legion.
Really? Did he exist in the comics?
No.
Oh.
So it's reminiscent of Ptolemy, who is, lots of people are called Ptolemy, but the most famous one is Egyptian king.
Yeah.
But Ptolemy, what does that mean? So in Greek, onomy or nomi, noma comes from name, and so something name, and this is where we get words like astronomy, name or the law of or study of, and peto is throw or throw away. So Ptolemy literally means throw away name.
Interesting.
Which again, does that mean Ptolemy's like, there's more to Ptolemy than we have seen?
Yeah, well, he talks about how his dad couldn't remember his name. He would just snap at him.
Right.
So, like, did he have to choose his own name eventually? And he chose this throwaway name.
Yeah.
That's
Ptolemy. So Sid sees the door and tries to tell David about it. And as soon as she tells David about it... No, we should back up, actually, before we say that. Sid goes to get her medicine, and Amy...
Oh, yes, Amy.
Why is Amy so mean?
Yeah.
Here, and then you talked about she takes away David's pie. Like, we can talk about Amy in both of those moments.
Yeah. She's extremely cruel, like kind of like Nurse Ratched in When Flew the Cuckoo's Nest.
We said in our first episode, in our intro episode to this show, we said that Clockworks is not a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest mental hospital, it's a 12 Monkeys mental hospital. But here, she's Nurse Ratched. She's the cruelest, most
and it's
sadistic kind of
nurse. It's really fitting that she's wearing a black nurse's cap instead of a traditional white one, because it feels like she's the reverse of a nurse, like she's the evil nurse. And she feels Lenny up in like almost a sexual way.
Not Lenny, Sid.
Sorry, she feels Sid up in almost a sexual way.
Yeah, especially smacking her butt.
Yeah, but also in a really cruel way if you know what Sid's deal is.
And Sid tells her, like, there's a note in my file, I can't stand to be touched. And she, clearly is doing it exactly to be cruel. And the look on Rachel Keller's face, on Sid's face of like, she's like barely containing, can barely hold it together. She looks like she's going to throw up being touched.
Yeah. And then Amy takes away David's pie in the cafeteria later. And she's acting like, all along, she's been acting like a motherly figure. She's been very maternal to David. And we've talked about whether, like, is David's mother dead? What happened to her? It seems like Amy did some raising of him in some ways. And here, she's like maternal but abusive mother. Like, she's fixated on him. And like, you're a bad boy. I'm going to take away your pie and eat it in front of you. Like a terrible mother.
Well, and the major cliche and trope of maternal behavior is feeding.
Yes.
It feeds when you're giving someone maternal characteristics, you make them feed. And so taking food out of his mouth is exactly evil mother.
Yeah.
And eating it in front of him.
Eating it in front of him. And then when Sid tries to give hers, nope, you can't do that. It's like the sibling trying to protect.
Yeah.
And no, you're not allowed to help David. She gives him no reason whatsoever.
No.
It's completely unreasonable.
Yeah.
And it's like, if this is an aspect of Amy, is she holding in some cruelty that we don't know about? Is this just Lenny messing with the relationship of David and Amy and Sid for some reason?
I mean, and that's a question to ask about all these people. How much is Lenny messing with them and how much is Lenny giving them an illusion and then they act out in the way that they would act in this context, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us to what I was about to say about Sid and the door again.
Mm-hmm.
How come Sid is the only one that perceives that things are wrong? Like, she can see the door.
Mm-hmm.
She is aware that it doesn't feel real. She's the one who's kind of pushing on things.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else is kind of playing their part in the holodeck episode that they've been landed in.
Yeah. We're deeply in her point of view.
That's
in this
true.
episode. So there's a potential that Melanie or Carrie are seeing that too. And we get a little sense of Carrie seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Male Carrie.
And more as the episode goes.
And more as the episode goes, exactly. So I think part of it is because we're in her point of view, but I do think that we've seen so much of this connection between David and Sid. More than just like they're a couple. She saw the angriest boy. She's been in David's head. They had their whole quiet room last episode.
Right.
And so she's experienced this fake world. And so she'd be more likely to see the cracks in
She's more perceptive than anyone else about the fake world, but more perceptive even than David is.
I don't know. I think David is so taken over at this point that he can't function.
And that brings us to when Sid starts to tell David and Ptonomy about the door. Immediately, Lenny shows up to distract.
Yes.
And, think back to the last episode and how much David, under Lenny's influence, was distracting everyone whenever they got close to something. We see that pattern continuing.
Yeah.
Right? And we saw it earlier as soon as Sid was reaching towards the door. The Sid Barrett, warning, come to the nurse's office. Like, if this is all a mental projection that Lenny is doing, then Lenny's in control of that. If, like, you're getting close to something, I call you away.
Yeah, exactly.
So Lenny shows up and takes David to a session right as Sid's about to tell him. And there's a sense of, we said earlier that when Sid talks about things not being real, Lenny doesn't seem worried by that. But when Sid starts telling David that things aren't real, Lenny does seem worried by that.
Exactly.
And intercedes to stop that from going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have David's session with Lenny.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about his sense of balance, and he talks about feeling like he's in control here.
He's happy.
Yeah.
He's so much happier than we've ever seen him in this. He has this giant room for some reason.
I mean,
he's got a whole, like, little apartment, whereas the rest of them are in their regular Clockworks room.
We see we see everyone's room in Clockworks, and it's just like the rooms in Clockworks were in Happy Jack, but David's does not look at all like that. He has books on the shelves, he has carpet, he has a huge room that does not look like a Clockworks room.
It seems like Lenny is doing everything possible to make him as happy as possible.
Yeah.
To make him feel at home. He has a home there. He has a real space where he can do all these things, where he can do yoga and play records and paint and all this stuff.
Yeah. And he specifically even, like, he's talking about being happy and he's talking about being balanced, and he certainly seems more lucid than we have ever seen him before. Like, think about this compared to how he has talked to therapists previously when he's all twitched. This is him just as calm as he was when he was talking about the constellations.
Yes, true.
But he specifically says he feels like he's in control. Yeah. And that's what it's exactly what Lenny wants, is for him to feel like he's in control when he isn't. And there's a lot of irony to the fact that he feels so in control when he's really not in control.
Yes.
He is completely controlled, not controlling.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he says, I feel in control here. And she says, do you ever worry that you'll lose it?
Yeah.
Why is she bringing that up?
Is she trying to make sure he doesn't feel like it, or why is she poking that? It seems unwise.
Yes, it does.
Like, if her goal is to placate him and make him be like the Lotus Eaters, why is she challenging that at all? I'm not sure. Unless maybe it's just that she can't control her perverse cruelty. She just wants to hurt him at the same time.
I think so, that on some level she wants him to know that he is not really in control.
Yeah. And she wants him to be hurt and unhappy, even though it's in her best interest to keep him happy.
Mm-hmm. Manic depression. Yeah. We'll get into this a little later as well. I mean, David mentions it more a little later, but we get in this session, we find out that David doesn't have schizophrenia in this illusion. He's manic depressive.
Yeah, and why? I mean, it makes sense, again, from Lenny's perspective. From Lenny's perspective, it makes sense to have everyone in this world think that Sid is the one who's delusional, to have David think that Sid is delusional, so that Sid, like, it's a way of gaslighting Sid, so that she perceives that the world isn't real and it's labeled as delusion. Doesn't really explain why Sid perceives things. I'm still not sure we've come to a satisfying answer of why Sid perceives things and no one else does.
No.
But why isn't David delusional in this reality? And why manic depression of all things?
Well, I feel like manic depression, which of course now is known as bipolar, and they don't ever call that in this because it takes place in the past, supposedly.
Except it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
They play records, Paul. They play records. Not like they're playing CDs or MP3s or whatever. Bipolar is two. Mm-hmm. Is the split in two. And I think that Lenny is distracting David by making him feel only two things. He's either depressed or he's manic. And the manic can be explained by Lenny and the depression can be explained by himself. When in reality, there's a reason this show is called Legion.
Yeah.
There's a legion of things in his head. And I think by the end of this season, we'll find out more. We don't know yet. We haven't seen the end of the season by the time we're recording this. But I think that Lenny wants him to think, the devil with the yellow eyes wants him to think that there's a dichotomy, that there is David and there is him. But the show is called Legion, and schizophrenia is multiple delusions. And I think that the multiplicity of it is going to be important.
And it's something that Lenny wants to erase and make it just bi.
Yeah.
we mentioned in the last episode the laughing children that doesn't seem to be either David or the devil with yellow eyes. And yeah, I think that's a good answer.
I think it's also just not schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And something he can want balance from, and it's something that seems legitimately a reason to be in a mental hospital that isn't schizophrenia. I guess.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Back to the pie.
Back to the pie?
Forward
to the pie.
Forward to the pie, yes.
Because that is the next scene.
When Sid starts eating her pie, and it's crawling with bugs, and she throws it away, it's exactly like the bugs on the strawberries in the mental room.
Yeah.
And for all the exact same reasons, right?
Yeah.
The bugs are there to show that there's something rotten, things aren't right, things that look appealing aren't appealing. In the mental room, Sid never saw those bugs. The camera focused on them with creepy music, but Sid didn't see them.
Yeah.
Now Sid sees them.
Yeah. She sees the corruption in this illusion.
Yeah. Again.
And does everybody else see the bugs? Everyone reacts, but that's kind of mental institution. She starts freaking out, everyone starts freaking out.
I feel like if you were in a mental hospital and you shouted out, "There's bugs in my food, there's bugs!" there'd be one or two other people there who would be like, "Oh no!"
Yeah, exactly. I think so too.
Maybe not, but I suspect.
We have no experience with mental institutions, we should say off the bat.
No, that wasn't clear.
I don't think they exist like this anyway.
Yeah, in the way that Clockworks exists, I don't think has ever existed.
Yeah, maybe more
exactly.
in the 60s than
maybe.
now.
Yeah.
So, should we get into this awesome musical montage? It's the coolest thing.
So, Lenny, oh my goodness. Lenny takes off her clear-rimmed glasses, throws her head back, and dances. And her costume changes from, she's wearing this turtleneck and long pants, and
she keeps the turtleneck.
Well, the turtleneck, but with a cutaway, with a different back.
Yeah.
So it has the same turtleneck front, but a different back. And then she's wearing, a leotard bottom and fishnet stockings. And first of all, once again, Aubrey Plaza, looking and being amazing.
Yeah, she's
in this. Her strut.
Yeah.
With just confidence turned up to 11, turned up to 17.
Well, and when you think about her on Parks and Rec and other things that I've seen her in, she tends to play insecure. Somewhat confident, but insecure. And in this, she has no insecurities whatsoever.
No.
And she is awesome.
She just, my goodness. And talking about 70s aesthetic of this show, this is a music video from the 70s. The flat color cutouts walking around and the color swatches, the aesthetic of this music video is it looks like, this is a stupid reference, but it shows my familiarity with 70s culture. But it looks to me like that Everybody Wants to Be a Cat section in the Aristocats. Color, it's all color blocks.
Yeah, and pop art.
Pop art, exactly. Yeah. 60s, 70s aesthetic.
Yeah.
And she's strutting around, and there's a part where her shadow, her silhouette strutting across the screen splits into 3, and then they all catch up. And if you watch it, the 3 aren't all in step. The ones behind run to catch up to the front one. So they're would have been slightly more complicated to shoot than just split them and put them back together. She splits and comes back together, and then where she is, what is she?
Yeah, she walks through David's memories and starts destroying things.
And remember how the devil with yellow eyes was walking through David's memories.
Yeah.
And here, we know Lenny is the devil with yellow eyes, and we see that again a few times in this episode.
She's just so much better looking, and so we'd rather look at her.
We would.
I would rather not look at that scary, fatty guy with the gross face, and yeah. And
she's trash. Has free reign over David's mind and David's memory and David's past. She's just, making herself at home.
And she swings from the noose. That part just my heart just in my throat. And she swings from the extension cord noose that he made in that first episode. And
yeah,
I can't believe that.
And
beautifully
humps
done.
His pillow.
Yeah.
But yeah, swinging over the noose, I was going to say, is her smashing and things in the kitchen, her walking through Clockworks, those are all, a powerful and affecting shots. But the swinging off of the noose is the killer.
Yeah, it really is.
In this little sequence.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic little thing. And I can see where I'm not surprised to hear that the director did music videos. Because, this is a little music video right in the middle.
Yeah, and I think a really good one.
We'll always talk about the music at the end, so we'll talk about what the music is later on.
Yes, we'll talk about the song and its meaning.
So that night, David comes into Sid's room and talks about being happy and wanting to stay, but Sid says she can't stay here. Not even for me. The next day, Carrie and Carrie play checkers while naming drugs. Melanie stares out the window and comments on the weather. Sid speaks of her dreams, and we get flashes of the team being back in David's room with the bullet heading towards them. Carrie and Carrie talk about their own dreams, and male Carrie tries to explain the door scientifically. Carrie and Carrie walk down the hall. Male Carrie pulls a multicolored scarf from his pocket like a clown, and then leaves Carrie alone to go to the bathroom. Walter watches her from a distance, creepily. Female Carrie looks, but he's not there. They go to their separate rooms, saying that female Carrie can just knock on the wall if she's scared. In bed, an ice cube floats above male Carrie's head, and suddenly he's on the astral plane with Oliver in the diver suit. He tries to speak to him in several different languages, and then follows him into the cube.
So first, the shot at the beginning of David and Sid in bed is the reverse of the same shot in Happy Jack, and it's so beautifully shot, the inverse. They're in each other's places. Mm-hmm. They're in each other's perspectives.
Yeah.
They're acting like each other in a lot of ways, except that, remember that first conversation in bed was when Sid told David that she was leaving. Here they have the conversation in bed, and it's Sid telling David that she wants to leave. Mm-hmm. David saying, we can stay here forever. We can just be, maybe they'll give us our own room. Sid says, I can stay here.
Yeah.
So, it's a reverse of the first time that they had this conversation in bed, but Sid still wants to leave, and David still doesn't or can't leave.
Mm-hmm. And Lenny has told David that not everyone is cut out for real life. And so Lenny has this hold on him of, you want to stay here. And she definitely has made this in such a comfortable place for David that he doesn't want to ever leave.
And this is where, like we said at the beginning of the episode, that Lenny as Dr. Busker was actually a halfway competent or halfway convincing psychiatrist to the rest of them, but not, saying to David, not everyone's cut out for the real life. You should stay for the real world. You should stay in this mental hospital the rest of your life. That is not, helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That reminds me, though, that not everyone's cut out for the real world reminds me of something that we skated past way back at the beginning of the episode when David and Petonomy are talking, and Petonomy said, that's the lie, that if we say the right words, stand on one leg, take the right drugs, you'll get better and you'll get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So Petonomy actually also is telling David, no, you're never going to get better. You're going to stay here forever. There's no before, there's no after.
Yeah.
Petonomy is, also towing the party line that Lenny wants them all, wants David. Wonder, does Lenny care what the rest of them think?
Yeah.
But she wants David to stay here and be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And Petonomy is part of convincing David that.
True. When they're talking about their dreams in the main room, Harry says he dreams about an ice cube, and he clearly is dreaming about the astral plane and Oliver. And Carrie starts saying,
"Yeah,
I dream about, that movie, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?" And she gets cut off, but she is also dreaming of the diver.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the diving suit is very Jules Verne and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yep.
So they are connected and dreaming of the same thing.
Even before in the Sid in bed at this section, before David comes in, she's dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about her dream later. And while she's dreaming, we see on the wall behind her, like above the bed, the headboard, we see a silhouette of legs kicking up. Those legs also appeared back in Happy Jack.
Yes.
Over David's bed, well, David, just before David has his episode where he floats and imagines, and sees, not imagines, where he floats and sees the devil with yellow eyes and things go red and he smashes things. You see the legs on the wall. Those legs are now on Sid's wall, and she's in the room that was David's room.
Yeah, that's the exact same room. Yeah, I watched those scenes side by side, and they're very much the exact same room and the exact same weird, legs behind it. And that seems to be Lenny, maybe.
Yeah, maybe
doing her dance. That's maybe person next door. It maybe isn't legs, but a machine of some kind is also what it looked like to me.
I don't know. It seems very much like legs to me. And it seems like legs kind of doing yoga.
Mm-hmm.
David does yoga when he's talking about being balanced. Right. There's those yoga legs on the wall. I thought of them. And Carrie, male Carrie, does yoga right before he goes to bed.
Yes,
Sort of. Why is there yoga in this episode?
Body control and balance. But once again, it's about balance.
Yeah.
And none of them have it.
So it's demonstrating how they don't have balance?
I think the legs on the wall are just meant to be... So it looks exactly the same as David's room. So we're remembering that exact same sequence from the very first episode.
Right. As Carrie and Carrie are walking down the hallway, male Carrie pulls this multicolored scarf out of his pocket to make Carrie laugh or something.
Oh, yeah, I feel like it's to distract her, maybe. They also need some distraction, and so he uses that as it's also maybe like part of like the whole thing is an illusion, and he's doing an illusion.
And it's a rainbow scarf. And remember, we have rainbow scarf here. Mm-hmm. We had Why Are There So Many Songs About Rainbows in the last episode.
Yeah, that's true.
And the Rainbow Room. And we had, in Clockworks, we had a song about how she's like a rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
She's like a rainbow playing while Sid and David's romance was growing.
Right.
So rainbows are a motif in this show that we keep coming back to again.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the reasons that rainbows on this show in general is, it's about a spectrum. Mm-hmm. It's about a rainbow happens when light goes through a prism and breaks. And so it's about a broken view on the world and things aren't cohesive like they should be. They're fractured.
Yeah.
But it's also about, like what you said, about bipolar is about two, and rainbows are about many.
Legion. And you see there's a lot of colors in the background and everything about these episodes. Color is really, really important.
There's also a bit of Bill Irwin, in addition to being an actor, is a clown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's maybe a bit of him playing to his strengths there.
Yeah, exactly. So Carrie goes to the astral plane, and we don't see what happens in this episode.
No.
He's there, and he comes across the diver, and he says hello in all these different languages. And I was reminded of that first scene in Clockworks in the first episode, where there's all these different languages, all these different words for welcome on the wall.
Yeah, and now here
he's trying to talk to Oliver using all these different languages.
Yep.
It's an interesting connection between that and this.
It's another mirror of Happy Jack again. Walter is stalking female Carrie.
Yes.
Right? What's up with that?
Well, in the real world, we can call it the real world. In the real world, she was the attacker. Mm-hmm. She never attacked him specifically, I guess.
No.
Or did she? He shot her.
Yeah, he's the one who shot her.
He's the one who shot her. So there is conflict.
He's the one that shot her. Maybe this is a repeat of he's the one who's going to hurt her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's scared of him for that.
Mm-hmm.
So later on in his room, David paints a portrait of Sid while she sits reading on his couch. She talks about the hospital not seeming real, and David is worried about her delusional thinking. Sid freaks out that David is supposed to be the one who's schizophrenic and leaves his room. In the hallway, Sid finds a depression on the wall that beats like a heart, and when she touches it, blood seeps out. It's gross. Lenny appears behind her and puts a pair of headphones on her with the sound of crickets. It immediately calms Sid, and she goes to sleep, floating through the hallway until she's on her bed. Ptolemy dreams of his childhood, and Carrie wakes suddenly, scared, and she goes to find Carrie next door, but he's missing. Walter appears, and she runs from him down the hall, calling Carrie's name. So David is painting this picture of Sid.
Mm-hmm.
And he's wearing this yellow shirt, and that's got paint all over it, but the paint is red. It almost looks like blood.
Yeah.
And it's blood on his, like, abdomen, which, if they were in the real world, that's where he's getting shot. So I feel like it's almost like this is him being shot.
And she sees that he's being shot. Yeah, for sure. Him painting her is another reflection of something that happened in Happy Jack when they were first in the little montage of their romance. She sketches him, and now he's painting her. Is there significance to the fact that she's missing an eye in his painting? Painted her all, but there's one eye missing. And I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, she's the one who sees. She's seeing things, and if you think of him as trying to make her not see. He's
trying to create a version of her that doesn't see quite as well. And then he tells her that she's schizophrenic and nothing she sees is real.
Yeah.
And she talks about the book that she's reading. I tried to catch what book it was, but I did not succeed.
I could never get it. She says it's about dreams.
The way she talks about it, I wonder if it is The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley.
Oh, interesting.
The things that she says about it. I mean, there are, I'm sure, other books that would fit that. But that's my guess based on the things she says about it.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't know. It's all about The Doors of Perception. It's about acid and meditation and that kind of thing. And I wonder, I mean, I don't know what more to make of it than that necessarily.
Yeah.
What is up with the bleeding hallway?
That's super gross.
It is super gross.
It's all silver. Like, it's not human flesh at all. And she touches it and she gets a flash of when she killed Lenny. And she's in the wall. Yeah. And so it's maybe partly that Lenny is putting this in her head that, like, hey, remember when you killed me? I don't know.
Does the devil with yellow eyes take the death of Lenny personally?
I don't know. No, probably not.
But the silver instead of blood, and then Lenny appears and she's got the same metallic silver fingernails that she did back in the last episode.
And she's wearing a silver vest.
Yeah.
Well, no, the back of it is silver. The front of it's black, so you can barely see it. But she's wearing a silver-backed vest. Yeah, she's wearing what looks like her turtleneck that she's always worn, but we see from the back that it's a silver-backed vest on top of it. So she's silver-backed like a gorilla.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think gorilla is where we're going here. No. But there is like a metallic, unnatural blood and unnatural colors and unnatural fingernails, and she's not what she should be. I don't know what is up with the silver specifically, but definitely silver is a color associated with Lenny in this episode and the last one. And that brings us to the headphones. You said earlier that the records are another sign that it's the past. But Lenny puts headphones on Sid's ears, and Sid hears something. The headphones aren't connected to anything. They're either Wi-Fi or they're MP3 built in.
They have a cord to a little thing on her belt.
They didn't have that technology in the 70s.
The big headphones like that existed then.
But a little portable thing that carries
a radio.
Song?
There'd be radio. There were portable radios back then.
That's an MP3 player.
It is so not an MP3 player. It's a big box thing. You're not paying attention.
Okay.
Maybe. It doesn't matter. The headphones are very 70s. They definitely have a cord.
Do they?
Yes.
But they don't always. Maybe they have a cord when she puts them on her head, but then Sid floats away in kind of a psychedelic thing and the cord doesn't float with her.
Yeah, well, that's like not real.
But then
none of it's real.
None of it's real. And she still has the headphones later in the episode in her bed, and they're still playing music into her ears.
Well, yeah, because that's part of the illusion.
The whole thing's an illusion.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's the same headphones that Lenny, the old Lenny, original Lenny, not extra crispy Lenny, has in Clockworks. At the very first episode, she's always listening to her headphones that are attached to her belt to this little box thing.
Oh yeah,
that I assume is a radio, and so that's a connection back to that Lenny.
And it's a way that Lenny uses to ignore the world around her, like in circle therapy. When the circle therapy starts to be about things she doesn't like or isn't interested in, she puts her headphones back on.
Yeah, exactly.
And like grooves out to whatever she's listening to that we don't hear.
Yes, that's true.
And I kind of wondered whether it was even real, whether she was just listening to music in her head. But maybe it was real music.
Yeah.
Here, Sid listens to crickets. What is that? It's beautiful. Crickets.
Crickets. Well, we did hear in the last episode there were crickets in the forest, and so it's like she's back in Summerland.
There were crickets in Summerland at the beginning of that episode, and there were crickets right outside David's house, right before everything went down in David's house.
Right.
There were crickets again.
Yes.
So this is third time in 2 episodes of crickets, and the song at crickets and a choir singing along with the crickets.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to just pause without deep analysis of it and just say that it really is beautiful. Like the music, the choir is singing, going along with those crickets is gorgeous.
Yeah, that put me to sleep.
It is so
in a good way.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. But it obviously has some kind of extra effect that Lenny does. Apparently, at this point, Lenny's obviously threatened enough by Sid that she has to take her out of the equation.
Yes.
Needs to put these headphones on her and just like, okay, stop poking the bear, stop poking the walls and making them bleed, get in your bed and be under my control.
The fact that the wall was bleeding, though, Sid didn't make them bleed. She walked past and the walls were bleeding. She touched them and, had flashes.
And blood seeped out.
But it was already a spot.
Yes.
Is that a sign that Lenny's mental control here is fading? She
Maybe.
need not keep this up for too long.
Yeah.
And in a scene we're about to talk about soon, Lenny talks about it all being too much work. And we see here signs that it's too much work, signs that Lenny can't actually maintain this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Even the presence of the door from the very beginning. Why is that door there? Lenny wouldn't have put that door there.
Right. Too hard to keep
pushing through.
Yeah. We said early, back in our intro episode when we were talking about things that this show reminds us of, we said Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, autonomy under the table, child autonomy under the table, and then adult autonomy under the table.
Yeah, that's straight out of that movie.
Straight out of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and, with the same effect here as there, that it's very trippy and it messes with our perception of what is happening and where we are and the scale of everything and what, Yeah,
exactly. Walter terrorizing Carrie is so scary. He's acting like he talks about being a wolf. He talks about eating alive. Have you ever ate something while it's still alive?
Yeah.
Oh, he's just like furiously scary.
Okay.
And Carrie can't find her other half, and she is so vulnerable without him.
So a few things about that. First, Walter's eating an apple.
Yeah.
Apples, if you want to make your character be creepy, get them to eat an apple. I don't know why, but there is nothing a fictional character can do that's creepier than eating an apple.
Usually it's eating an apple with a knife and eating off the knife.
Well, I mean, that's extra, but just like, put someone eating an apple. Have you ever seen anyone eat an apple on screen without it being unsettling and upsetting? It's because they're like, and you're biting, you open your mouth wide and bite right into it. And then what Walter is doing is, but still looking, not at the, like, staring at Carrie while eating an apple.
Yeah.
It's about consuming her. There's obviously an association with eating an apple in general of, the Garden of Eden, which, tradition says that that's an apple.
Yeah.
So there's an aspect of sin and predatory sin and subtext of sexual sin associated with apple eating. And then he comes along and he says, like, what big teeth you have, said the wolf. The wolf doesn't say what big teeth you have. Red Riding Hood says what big teeth you have.
Yeah, he does.
But why does he say the wolf says it? Because he really wants Nathaniel Halpern writing this line, really wants us not to have any confusion that Walter is Little Red Riding Hood, right? He is the wolf, and he's threatening her, and he's threatening her in all the ways that Little Red Riding Hood is also about sexual predators.
Yeah.
And what exactly he is planning to do with Carrie is not explicitly said, but it's all but explicitly said.
Yeah.
He says young, but not too young.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's so creepy. I don't want to get like too into how creepy it is.
No. But I do want to say, Carrie, Amber Midthunder playing Carrie, responding to him so frightened and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And when she kind of puts a little bit of bluster of like, careful, I bite, but without any heart in it, not convincingly, she just seems weak and vulnerable and frightened.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we've talked about the actors on the show and praised a lot of performances, and we haven't talked about Amber Midthunder much. I had thought that her performance was not one of my favorites. It was a little bit, flat. Her aggressiveness was a little bit flat. Now, though, I think that all along she has been what we see here. She has been frightened and vulnerable and trying to project strength and talking about fighting. I gotta fight. I always want to fight. I love to fight. And I think that Amber Midthunder has been playing it all along as she is beneath that, just barely beneath the surface. She's vulnerable and she's afraid.
Anytime she's out of Carrie's body,
she's afraid.
She's terrified of her life.
Yeah, and that's why she wants to fight everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I review her performance with that in mind, I like it so much more than I ever have.
Yes.
That she's just behind her eyes, she looks terrified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's something that has been there all along in that performance, and we're seeing it in a new way now.
Yeah. So Walter, as he's chasing Carrie down the hall, he's whistling.
He is.
Back in the last episode, when they were in Division 3, Kissinger was whistling and twiddling his thumbs, and it just kind of occurred to me when I watched this for the first time that, was that Kissinger or was that Walter? We know that Walter has looked like other people.
And we know
that Kissinger was acting nothing like Kissinger.
And we know at the end of the Division 3 section of What's on the Other Side, Walter suddenly is there.
Yeah, he's the only living thing left.
So if that was Kissinger, if Kissinger was Walter, this is why he so wanted them to let him out.
Mm-hmm.
He so wanted them to bring him along. He was, as soon as they don't help him, he's super aggressive, misogynistically aggressive, in exactly the way that we see Walter being in this episode. Yeah. And then the whistling is our last piece of that puzzle. I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think that is my current theory, that what we saw as Kissinger in that cage was not Kissinger at all.
It was Walter. Was it Walter all along from the very start?
Every time we saw Kissinger in that cage?
Was it actually Walter talking to Amy, trying to get Amy to confess to a friend?
Maybe. I mean, he was trying to get Amy to tell him about what he knew. He's you can see it as he's drilling Amy for information, trying to get maybe some clues of where David is from Amy. But on the other hand, seems very much more broken and weak, at that point than he does the next time we see him in that cage.
Yeah, definitely. When we see him in that cage with Sid and Ptonomy, he is not acting like himself at all. And so maybe he is Walter.
Maybe it's Walter.
Yeah, be interesting.
Yep.
So David walks down the hall and suddenly sees the wooden door for the first time. And now the time is confusing here because it was night when Carrie was being chased and this is daytime again. So it's unclear about if he's just in a different part of the hospital or what. But he attempts to go through the door, but Amy appears and she tells him that he's unwanted and unloved and gags to make him gag too, and he runs away. We see Melanie watering flowers over a tiny grave and then praying by her bedside. She suddenly sees Oliver in the diver suit on the other side of the wall. She pushes through the wall and follows him. At the end of a long hallway, she emerges from the mirror in David's bedroom, where they're all frozen in time. She tries to touch a bullet, but it burns her. She tries to move David and Sid, but she can't. Then giant eyes appear on either side of the mirror that I don't think she sees. In Lenny's office, David asks if she's seen Sid. Lenny questions his love for Sid and then talks about ants who have spores that take over their central nervous system. She steps on David's crotch and talks about power. She says Walter understands, and we see him again chasing Carrie down the hall. Lenny says she knew David's real father. She climbs on top of David, saying he couldn't hide from him. Briefly, she turns into the devil with yellow eyes. She says they've known each other since the womb. She chokes David and writhes on him, saying she only needs his body. Suddenly, David is in a tiny, dark box like a coffin. Sid is still asleep, but the diver comes and takes off her headphones. The diver opens his mask, and it's not Oliver, it's Carrie. And we cut to credits.
So David walking down the hall and he sees the door.
Mm-hmm. The illusion is cracking again.
We talked earlier, only Sid could perceive that things weren't as they should be, but David is starting to see it. And is it because the illusion is cracking? Is it because he's believing what Sid has told him? Like, it's all mental, right? So if he believes that it's not real, he maybe can perceive that it's not real. And just like when Sid saw the door, something shows up to distract him. Mm-hmm. And just like when Sid saw the door, it was, the medical personnel. We have that again, but it's Amy specifically. Mm-hmm. And is Amy willingly, it seems like too much of a coincidence that Amy shows up just as David's about to discover the door. Yes. So is Lenny able to manipulate Amy into being there? Or is Amy not really Amy? Or how can Lenny get Amy there to distract David at the right moment if she's allowing Amy to be herself?
Or maybe Amy just happens to be there in her fake rounds of the hospital.
Pretty convenient that she's there at that moment to distract David from what Lenny doesn't want him to see.
Yes, that's true. I don't think it's that important. I think it's just part of the illusion.
Right. And once again, Amy so cruel.
Yes, this is more of this abusive mothering thing that, we adopted you. She mentions the adoption. She says that he's unwanted. They don't love him.
And it all sorts of so things. Personal.
You make us sick to be around. It is so personal. And then she does this horrible gagging thing.
Oh, man.
That is much more sibling-like. That's much more like when you're both in the back seat and you're like, I'm feeling a little car sick, and your sibling goes to make you try and throw up. This actually this isn't a true story about me or anything, but I've definitely heard this is the story of other people. I don't think my sisters were ever that cruel.
Yeah, I feel like David, when she starts doing that dry gagging, I feel like throwing up too.
Don't make a sound. Don't make a sound. Don't subject our listeners to that sound.
Oh man, it's awful.
It's so bad.
And what you said before about that she's, abusive. And specifically adoption. That's too on the nose to be a coincidence. Mm-hmm. We've wondered earlier in this episode how much these are these people. Mm-hmm. Is this what Amy really thinks underneath? Does Amy have this hostility towards David that she has not been able to express before, and now suddenly she's in a position that she can, and she is talking about how she did not want to adopt him. They adopted him because they had to.
And then he was not a really good brother.
Yeah.
It was not a nice, it was not just a regular brother. It was a weird brother who did weird things and was mentally ill and had to go to an institution and potentially killed their mother. We still don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah.
So I do think there is maybe an aspect of Amy is holding this in. All we've ever seen of real Amy is terrified.
Yeah. Basically.
Or in the past, happy. But as a person, that there's got to be something beneath the surface on Amy. She's got to have some resentments of David. And the last time they interacted, he was acting terrifying.
Yes.
He took her to their childhood home and threatened her and was, and that was all so scary.
I mean, even if on some level Amy knows, and I don't know that she's been given enough information to figure this out, but even if she can on some level figure out that it was not David David was under the control of something when he was terrorizing her, exactly as you say, the last memory she has of him is of him terrorizing her. Mm-hmm. And if she didn't resent him already,
yeah, she sure does now.
It makes sense that she does now.
Yeah.
And she's in a position of power where she can take that resentment out. Mm-hmm. Oh, mercy.
Yeah, in a terrible way.
So...
The tiny grave?
Yeah, what is up with the tiny grave?
I don't know if we want to talk about it too much, but Melanie has this little diorama sort of thing of a tiny gravestone that is maybe representing I'm acknowledging that my husband has died. But then she waters it and teeny tiny flowers come up.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
And they come up like it's time lapse. They're coming up and blooming, but then there's no cut. We pan over to her in real time. Mm-hmm. And so, did that happen in real time? Are they really there? If they were just there and we hadn't seen them grow, I would assume that she'd made them out of plasticine and she's made a little diorama as a representation of her mourning for her husband. But how come the flowers grew? That's really weird.
But I mean, it's all fake. It's all like part of the illusion. This place isn't real. And so things like this can happen. And I mean, and she's doing things like she's watering flowers that are picked.
Yes.
In the first scene, like she's spraying a Gerber daisy that's just like a stem flower that's not in a plant. And so like you don't need to spray a plant that's cut. You know, like she's acting like things are alive
when they're not
when
alive.
They're dead.
Yeah.
And this is all part of this. But at this moment is right before she sees Oliver. And so she's watering something that looks dead and it comes alive. And so it is alive.
Yeah, that's very good.
She pushes through the wall. Really interesting because Oliver appears on the other side of the wall and we see like the stripe in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes to the wall and she feels that it's just a wall and he disappears and you're like, oh man, she's just going to like not be able to, it's just all an illusion. But then she pushes through it.
Yeah. And what she gets to, she walks through a hallway and what she gets to is the room in the real world. And when she pushes through it, her clothes change.
Yeah. She goes back into her clockwork, or she goes back into her Summerland outfit. Yeah.
And her hair and her makeup in Summerland.
She's exactly the same as she was in that previous
And she's wearing the gloves that she uses to try to touch the bullet, but can't. Mm-hmm. It's too hot or it's too painful.
Mm-hmm. She can't change the scene at all. And so they need to come up with a different solution.
Yeah. And what do the eyes on the wall there mean? Does this mean that that Lenny can see them here where they are still? Lenny's still watching them?
I'd say so. I mean, she's there in that room. She's not physically there, but she's there in David, and so she knows what's going on.
Right.
And so I think she's on the astral plane, and this is all part of that. So she sees everything. I think that is what those eyes mean.
They have not escaped.
They have not escaped by going there.
No.
She is everywhere because this is all still her illusion.
Yeah. And then we get to David and Lenny in Lenny's office.
And this scene is like vitally important, I think, for the entire season.
When we've heard before, twice now, once from Oliver and once from Carrie, we've heard Lenny, the devil with yellow eyes, being described as a parasite. Mm-hmm. And now we have...
She describes herself
as a parasite. She makes a reference to Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, which is a fungus, by the way, that I already knew about, right? We watched a documentary about it not too long ago.
Yeah, it was in that BBC Earth documentary.
Yeah, and the shots that
they're straight out of that
documentary.
Absolutely. I even heard of it before that, I think. This is a thing where, like, zombie ants.
Yes.
Super, super gross. I never ever want to see that shot of the ant thing running out of its head ever again. It grosses me out.
And Lenny talks first about love being like that, and then later she implies that she is that, like your own walking, talking fungus.
Yeah.
She implies that she's the fungus to him, who's going to destroy him. And we can say two things about that. We can say first, like a third character confirming, and the most plausible yet, confirming that she's a parasite.
Yeah.
She's saying so herself. But also, just to back up with her talking about love is nothing but chemicals in the brain. Mm-hmm. That's, a tired perspective. But it's interesting coming from Lenny, who is herself nothing but chemicals in his brain.
Yes,
right?
Essentially,
Or if not, like, there's two ways to think about what Lenny could possibly be, right? Mm-hmm. If she's something in any way physical, the only thing she could be is chemicals in David's brain or some kind of spore or fungus that's causing chemicals in his brain.
Yes.
Right? I don't think that we are meant to think that she is in any way physical.
No.
She's a psychic entity divorced from her body, which means she knows better than anyone the existence of emotion and thought and mind that is not chemicals in the brain. Mm-hmm. She knows better than anyone that reducing the mind to chemicals in your brain is false, right? Yeah. So when she talks about love is nothing but chemicals shooting off in your brain, well, you are a disembodied psychic entity. Mm-hmm. you know that there's more to the mind than chemicals in the brain.
Yeah.
Right? It just seems that if anyone to have the perspective, it's tired perspective, and it can't possibly be sincere coming from her.
Yeah. I don't know. She also says, what's the point in all that? What's the point in babies? This is like love leads to babies. And what's the point in babies? And he's like, life? You're asking what's the point of life?
Yeah, what's the point of life?
Yeah.
What you call life.
What you call life. So what is what she calls life? Or he,
I mean, well, Lenny is speaking, we can call her.
Yeah.
This is something that Ptolemy said in What's on the Other Side, and Carrie addressed in What's on the Other Side, is they talk about it like it. And even, what's his name, the Division 3 guy.
It wears a human face?
It wears a human face.
Yes.
Lenny's not human. She's not just a human's psychic power disconnected from its body. She doesn't continue to be human. Mm-hmm. Right? And this comes back once again to David says that Dr. Poole once told him, I can't remember which episode this is in, but David says at some point that Dr. Poole once told him that monster is a verb, not a noun. To be a monster, you have to do something monstrous. Mm-hmm. Here, people keep calling Lenny the monster, and we have both from her mouth and from other people's mouths kind of a counterpoint to Dr. Poole's perspective. She does monstrous things, but she also is a monster.
Yes.
She's not human. She's not just a mutant. She's an older mutant, but divorced from its body and has become something that's not a mutant.
Yes.
And she, like, what you call life, because she's not human or mutant, or, like, she's not like
she's
that.
She's not alive in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. She knows David's real father.
Yes.
So we have confirmation here. We already know, outside of the text, it won't be long before we know, I'm sure, that Professor X is David's father. Lenny knows David's father, fought with David's father. Yeah. This is him being in Lenny is some kind of revenge, he thought he would keep you away from me. He's been with David since the womb.
Yeah, and we have Lenny saying that what she wants from David is power, but she also implies that what she wants from David is revenge on David's father. And we know, I mean, I'm not going to be cagey about it. We've mentioned it before, that Professor X, right?
Yeah.
You said that. So she knows Professor X, or she knew Professor X, and her reason for attaching to David in the first place was revenge on Professor X.
Yes.
Now it's become, he's so powerful, she's going to use his power in greater ways. Mm-hmm. And we've talked since the beginning of the show about what is the devil with yellow eyes. Right way back in our introductory episode, I talked about a mutant who is psychic and had battles with Professor X on the astral plane.
Yeah.
Is the Shadow King. I am pretty convinced at this point that Lenny had a big battle with Professor X once and was disembodied as a result of it, and is now coming to get revenge and manifested as a dog named King.
Yeah, I think the dog's name is your biggest clue.
So I'm gonna just think of Lenny until I get evidence that I'm wrong, which I don't think I'm ever gonna get. I'm gonna think of Lenny the Devil with Yellow Eyes as the Shadow King. That's what I think we have here.
And she says that she's tired of maintaining this whole illusion and just locks David in a tiny box. So he's mentally now, he's in his own, like, grave, essentially.
We've seen that this is getting tiring to her. And we imagine, like, again, in terms of Lenny, and we've seen throughout The Devil with Yellow Eyes, Lenny has impulse control issues.
Yes.
She,
very much.
Just does what she feels like often. The section at the beginning psychoanalyzing all David's friends seems like exactly the kind of thing that would be fun once, but like, oh, I'm not going to do that forever.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly.
So she sets it up because it seems like it's a good idea, and then she just gets tired and bored of it and is like, forget this, new plan. And we end with Sid, with the diver who is Carrie, not Oliver.
We end with Sid in David's childhood bed. She's got the sheets with the astronaut on them. She's got the lamp next to her. She's no longer at Clockworks. She's in David's childhood bedroom.
Really?
Yes. She's not.
She's got
all the little elements of David's bedroom, especially she's got the lamp with the constellations on it that we see every time. And the astronaut sheets. And then there comes the diver. And it's not Oliver, it's Carrie. Why is it Carrie?
There's something happened between when Carrie met the diver and now something has happened that we're going to, I'm sure, find out about soon. And he removes the headphones that are the crickets and she wakes up. And we get the song, and we'll talk about the song in a second, but it's the lyrics are Wake Up.
Yeah, well, let's go. I mean, we're done the episode. Let's go straight into the music of this episode.
If we're done talking about the details of the episode beat by beat, there's our two overarching things that we want to talk about is the close and the music. Why don't we start with the music, and why don't we start at the end of the music? So as Sid wakes up, the song that leads right into the closing credits is Oh You Pretty Things. It's a David Bowie song, but not performed by David Bowie, performed by Lisa Hannigan. And as far as I could tell, this recording of it is a new recording for the show by Lisa Hannigan. And it starts off, I mean, the lyrics that we begin with are a thing that this show does sometimes where it's maybe too on the nose. It starts up, wake up, you sleepyhead, put on some clothes, get out of bed, as Sid wakes up and gets out of bed. And then the song seems to be about an alien invasion of Earth, and humanity is threatened, and you humans think that you're going to survive, but your time is over.
Sounds very David Bowie.
It sounds very David Bowie, and it ends, the last lines of the song are, Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your mamas and papas insane? Let me say it again, you gotta make way for the Homo superior.
That's a whole thing.
That is a massive thing in X-Men.
Yes.
I mean, that could be...
Magneto is always about Homo superior.
Exactly, he is. That's Magneto's name for what mutants are, is Homo superior.
Yeah.
And so the idea of conflict between mutants and humans is definitely, there's a reference to that in this particular song. And there's also lines in the song about like a crack in the sky and a hand reaching down.
Oh yeah, that's almost like straight out of the episode.
There's cracks in the wall and there's cracks in the sky and there's a hand reaching down and there's giant eyes watching them. And this song is all about like the illusion of your safety is breaking and something else is coming and it's going to undo everything you thought about the world as you thought it was.
Yeah.
Which fits with this episode very well.
Yep. So what other songs are in this episode?
There's two more. I'm going to go back to the beginning. The major song is the song that Lenny dances to, but we'll deal with that last.
Okay.
The other two songs are both songs that David plays on his record while he's calm and happy in his room. They are both from Fauré's Requiem, which we mentioned Fauré's Requiem back in The Undiscovered. There was a movement to Fauré's Requiem playing in the lighthouse, in Dr. Poole's lighthouse, when it was actually Walter. Okay. And Sid and Ptonomy are talking to Dr. Poole, and in the background, I don't think meant to be heard by the characters, but heard by us, was Pieyesu from Fauré's Requiem.
Okay.
Now, when David is talking about how he's in such balance and his life is happy now and he feels like he's in control, he puts on a record and it's Fauré's Requiem and it's In Paradisium, which is the last movement of the Requiem. And it, like the In Paradisium would suggest, it means in paradise.
Oh.
So he's talking about I'm in control here and everything is wonderful here and the music is in paradise.
There you go.
Later, when David and Sid are in David's room and he's painting her, he puts on a record again and it's again Fauré's Requiem. and it's libera me, which is Latin again. It means deliver me, O Lord, from death eternal on that fateful day.
Like he needs Sid to deliver him.
Exactly.
In that moment. That's interesting.
And there's the specific meanings of those two movements in those two sections seem like they make sense. And then there's also he keeps playing a requiem. Requiem is a mass for the dead. And Sid has talked about in her dreams that they're all dead already. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
And he is playing his own mass for himself, who is dead, and for all his friends who are dead. And it's like the happy parts of it, sort of, especially in Paradisium. But it's a musical cue that, again, on some level, David is aware.
Yeah.
He ignores it, and he is lured into a sense of complacency, but there's subtle hints that on some level he knows that things aren't right. On some level, he, just like Sid, knows that he's dead.
Yeah.
The song that Lenny dances to is...
That's the major song in this episode.
The major and most memorable song of this episode.
And is what we named the episode after. It's a new day. We're calling this one.
It is Nina Simone, Feeling Good.
Mm-hmm.
And it... lyrically, it's a pretty straightforward song. It has, birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting by, you know how I feel. It's a new day. It's a new dawn. It's a new life for me. Yeah, it's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like Somewhere Over the Rainbow. The song itself is everything's great, and I feel great, and the music is so upbeat.
Mm-hmm.
But it becomes incredibly creepy because of the character it's associated with.
Yeah,
because it's Lenny
sinister.
Who's like, I feel good.
Yeah.
Well, if Lenny feels good, that is bad news for us.
For everybody else. Yeah.
And it's a fantastic song because even on its surface, it's a song about feeling good. Lyrically, it's about feeling good, and musically, it's powerful and compelling. But it's not, sweet.
Mm-hmm.
It's not innocent sounding musically.
No.
It's got this heavy bass, and it's got this like grinding sax, and it's got a real edge to it musically. It's part of what makes it so compelling and so good, but it fits really well with this, like, it's a new day and I'm feeling good, and what I'm going to do with that new day is kill you all.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Definitely, that's the
such a good choice. Such a excellent song for that sentiment.
Yeah. So let's get into what they wear in this episode, the clothing that they all wear. They're all in... all our major characters are in Clockworks uniforms.
Right.
But there are variations on those uniforms, and everyone is wearing a different variation on it.
Mm-hmm.
Melanie is dressed in this red shirt with a long brown coat over top. At first I thought it was like a long men's coat, like a dress coat, but watching it again I realized it was a house coat, like a robe over top of it. She's wearing the exact same thing as Lenny wore in episode 1.
Interesting.
Happy Jack.
Why is Melanie wearing what Lenny wore?
I don't know. I'm not really sure the significance of it. I just noticed it and was like blown away that Melanie, of all people, is wearing what Lenny wore. And there's a connection between who's trying to control David.
Right.
In this world, Melanie or Lenny. And obviously Lenny has more control over him. That Lenny that wore that wasn't the Lenny that's in his head, really.
Yeah, I mean, we
assume that
still speculate on that, but I would...
The Clockworks Lenny is a different Lenny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable saying that.
Yeah. Her hair, Melanie's hair is really childlike. She's got the little Brett, and as I said before, she looks like 30 years older than she usually does. She's not put together at all.
She's swirling her hair all the time.
But there's always red in these episodes. Red is very associated with things, and there's 3 characters wearing red. Melanie wears a red shirt. Autonomy wears a red shirt with a black and red jacket, and Walter wears orange and red as well. So we've got Autonomy and Melanie are both controlling David in a way, and then Walter is the bad guy. That's kind of my interpretation of them all wearing the red. Amy has her black and white nurse's uniform and red fingernails.
Does she?
Yes.
Oh.
So she's got these blood red fingernails, and you see them when she feels up Sid.
Notice the red fingernails.
So that makes her this kind of villainous red with her.
I like what you say about red in terms of controlling characters who are controlling David. Because Walter's the one who shot at them. So in one sense,
he's really
he is controlling David's future, or he has already done something that will control David's future, or potentially will.
Yep.
Amy with red fingernails is like a tiny amount of control.
Yeah, she's trying.
But trying.
Yeah.
And the fingernails specifically are like a malicious, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Her claws.
Yeah.
Makes me think of Tennyson, nature red in tooth and claw.
Yes. We have Carrie and Carrie are wearing kind of standard Clockworks uniforms, the yellow and the black and the orange and the black. They're not wearing the exact same thing, which I thought was interesting.
I think it's a good choice.
I think it's a good choice
too much.
Yeah. Sid and David are both in the orange jackets. Sid's has a white stripe and David has a yellow stripe, and he's got a yellow shirt underneath his. David's yellow stripe and yellow shirt makes him seem sunnier. Like he's happy in this place, and he's got a sunny yellow shirt, and it does later on kind of have this paint that looks like blood on it, which is less happy.
But I definitely agree with you. His color palette is very cheerful. I noticed in Happy Jack, Sid almost always, I am not confident with saying always, but if not always, close to always, wore black shirt and orange pants.
Yeah.
And here she's wearing an orange shirt and black pants.
Yeah, she's the opposite.
So she's inverted of what she was like in Happy Jack.
Yeah. I think we've already talked mostly about what Lenny wears. She's got the clear glasses that she takes off and on that seem to be like her mask when she's taken off the glasses sometimes.
Yep.
She wears the black turtleneck. She wears a red belt. She has these cool checkered socks that are red and black and white, kind of like the checkerboard that Carrie and Carrie are playing checkers at one point. She has the silver nails again. So she's got kind of the claws, these silvery claws. She's got the fishnets and underwear in the dance scene with the same turtleneck. So she kind of maintains this like closed off upper part with the like brand new sexy legs Lenny.
I don't know. I think maybe the turtleneck symbolizes her still being closed off. I feel like the turtleneck is a continuity, but I don't think it's about closed offness.
Yes, okay.
I think it's a great costume.
Yeah.
I think it looks so good.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, so she's got the little catch of red with the red. She always has the red belt on.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of another thing there. And I think it's the touches of red on everyone was definitely a new thing in this episode that made me notice.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of red on the Clockworks uniforms back in Happy Jack. I don't think there was.
Well, Lenny had the red shirt.
Just Lenny.
Yeah. There, in the background, there was some people with red shirts.
And I don't know if this has any meaning, but Ptonomy's hair is slightly different. His
Yes, right, yeah. He definitely, he's grown in the sides.
Yes.
And it makes him look softer.
It does, exactly. Makes him look softer.
More, it's just not quite as put together and sharp. He's just a little soft and like...
And his performance, too, like we've seen this Ptonomy before. Throughout this whole episode, Ptonomy's always the Ptonomy who was talking to David with milk.
Yes, exactly.
Right? He's the softest version of Ptonomy, the friendliest version of Ptonomy. He doesn't have any of the suspicion of David and the hardness that comes with that throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, he sure is.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our podcast.
So, if people wanted to get in touch with us, Jan, how would they do that?
Well, if you want to continue this conversation, if you notice things that we haven't noticed or talked about, or if you just want to have a little chat about Legion, you can talk to us on Twitter. We're at ClockworksCast. You can send us an email if you want to talk for more than 140 characters. Clockworkscast@gmail.com.
And especially, we're going to be doing a season wrap-up episode when we're done talking about the whole season. If you have things that you think we should talk about in that season wrap-up, the season wrap-up episode will be a time that we'll read things that you have to say, read your thoughts, and an email might be a good way to send those thoughts to us.
Our website is Goodstuff.fm/Clockworks. And if you'd like to support us, you can leave a review on iTunes. Any reviews help to bump us up and help other people find us. Or more directly on patreon.com/clockworkscast, where you can donate $1 a month or whatever you can afford just to help us out a little bit. If you don't like our sound quality, we're going to get better microphones if we can get some support. So that's about it for us.
I've been Paul Moffat.
I've been Jen Moffat.
Goodbye.